Spoke to Benjamin Anthony. He's chief executive of Miriam Institute, an international forum for Israel-focused discussion. He's also an Israeli Defense Force combat reservist. He gave me his take on what the Israeli government's key aims inside Gaza were.
There are two aspects to what is taking place at this time. First and foremost, to intensify the military operations inside the Gaza Strip, including a ground incursion with a view to toppling and destroying Hamas. Secondly, to bringing the hostages home. In the assessment of that cabinet, it is very, very clear that the belief is increased pressure on Hamas is most likely to lead to the ongoing release of hostages back to the state of Israel.
Benjamin Anthony, we are hearing calls from the International Red Cross again for a ceasefire. They're calling for an immediate halt to what they're describing as intolerable levels of human suffering inside the Gaza Strip. You refer to the events of October 7th, which of course led to really horrific Israeli deaths. But the International Red Cross wants a ceasefire now. Do you think that the Israeli authorities will heed this call in any way?
I think that the International Red Cross would do well to heed the call of the Israeli government, which is to have visitation rights at the very least to Israel's hostages. Those hostages, as I mentioned, include the elderly, the infirm, our men, women, children, and soldiers, and all of them must come home. Now, were there any adherence to basic human rights on the part of the depraved terror organization Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip by way of a democratic election in which Palestinian Arabs voted? If there were any adherence to basic norms of humanity, they would grant access to our hostages by the International Red Cross. It's there that I'd like to see some potency and effect on the part of the International Red Cross at this time. That's where they should be addressing themselves to, and that's the request of the Israeli government at this moment.
Are you concerned that Israel's actions in Gaza will trigger a second front in the war? Are you worried about the escalation, possible escalation of this, that Hezbollah might get involved based on what they're seeing inside Gaza?
So that's a very interesting question, and I thank you for asking it. The reality is that the state of Israel is now in a conflict with Hezbollah already. So in other words, there already is that additional front to our north, and it's a far more potent enemy than that which we face down south inside the Gaza Strip. Having said that, my personal view, and it has been my view since my participation in the Second Lebanon War of 2006, inside southern Lebanon, is that the state of Israel really ought to be launching a first strike now against the aerial munitions and capabilities of Hezbollah inside southern Lebanon. And I'll explain why. Our society in its entirety is traumatized as a consequence of the murderous scenes that we saw on October the 7th, scenes that we could not have imagined befalling our people in the state of Israel. But there's an additional anxiety. What will happen if the North opens up a front, to your question? My answer to that question, we should not be led by the whims and wills of Hezbollah, another terror organization. Rather, we should take this matter into our own hands, degrade the military capabilities of that terror organization by striking their munitions in southern Lebanon, and then we can act with greater vigor and in a more effective and focused way down south against Hamas, which this government has said must be destroyed and must be toppled in parallel with our hostages coming home.